Really, our topic today is quite interesting, and it digs a little bit into what you folks are doing internally. It gives you some ideas of what it could and would look like inside your organization. What we're talking about today is really the change management process. Having a process that allows you to manage how things are changing within your organization, the pressures that come from customers and issues that are found internally. Specifically, we're talking today about the 3D Experience platform and a role on the platform called the change manager role. Now, the change manager role is what gives us this end-to-end process. What I'm going to outline for you today is that end-to-end process. I'm also going to show you live some of the pieces of that process. Now, as kind of a disclaimer, when you see all these pieces, every organization implements each of these pieces differently depending on the types of changes. When a change is critical to the business, there's a lot more eyes on it, there's a lot more approval on it, the process is deeper. But for some typical day-to-day engineering changes, maybe the process is a bit more simple. You tend to weigh the risk of the change and the process together. I'm not advocating in any way that the process needs to be complicated or all-encompassing, but this tool will give you the ability to put a end-to-end process together to incorporate the different types of changes that you need. So introducing myself, I'm Kevin Holbrook. I'm a product manager here at CADimensions. I've been here over 20 years dealing with data management, PLM solutions, having a lot of these discussions with our customers over the years. And one of the things I've found is that most companies have a change process. Sometimes it's hodgepodge, sometimes it's paper, sometimes it's not complete. Maybe there's a change process for engineering, but the shop floor isn't involved and other departments aren't involved. So my goal is to kind of lay out the whole thing for you today. So let's go ahead and get started. What we're going to cover today is I want to talk about the elements of a change process. I want to talk about all those pieces, what they look like, why they're important. And then I want to talk to you about the roles in the 3D Experience platform for change management. Specifically the change manager role, which adds the completeness to the change management process. It gives you the ability to manage the process. I'm also going to show you some examples of change processes, different companies that do different things so that we can kind of level set with what we've seen. And then I'm going to demo each of the elements on the 3D Experience platform so you can get a base look and hopefully want to have some more discussions. Now, what if you walked into work tomorrow and your company announced to you that you're moving to another CAD system? How would that make you feel? Now, I can imagine if you want to post your response in the questions section, I'd love to hear how that would make you feel. If there's anybody who said, "Yay, I'm getting off SolidWorks," I understand. In this case, but that's a change. That's a big change, right? Making changes require you to think a little bit further because change isn't done in a vacuum, right? When you make changes in an organization, you've got to consider things like, what's the issue causing us to consider change, right? Why would we switch from SolidWorks to another CAD package? Okay, how much will it cost? We've got to buy all new licenses and maintenance and training. You've got implementation and consulting fees. Okay, does that even make sense? What is the expected outcome? If we switch to a different CAD package, are we better? What does that do for our customers? What does that do for our business? Okay. Do we have resources to make this type of change? Okay, maybe we've got a bunch of SolidWorks users in-house and nobody's ever touched this other software and they're not interested. So are we going to have trouble with the resources? Are there other options that we should be looking at? Maybe it's a problem with how you use SOLIDWORKS. Maybe you need to get better on certain things. We can wrap around training. Who will this affect and how? Is it just engineering? How does it affect manufacturing and sales and marketing? So this whole idea of change is really important, that we have to understand a lot of things. We can't just, hey, we're going to make this happen and that's it. So that's where a change process comes into play. Now, a change process is typically used for almost everything. It's internal process changes, it's document changes, it's engineering changes, it's tooling, it's all the things in your organization, even how you deal with customers. But it really comes down to 4 elements. First of all, you have to identify what needs to be changed. You need to evaluate that change. You need to understand the impact, the cost, the groups involved. This is the evaluation. It doesn't make sense. If I use the example of changing CAD packages, you're going to want to go through a really serious evaluation to understand that. Once you get past evaluation, you get into planning. This is where you're organizing the resources. You're making sure that the timelines are set, how it affects those other groups is planned for, how it affects inventory and production and so on. And then you have the implementation. These are the actual changes, somebody who's actually monitoring what's occurring. So some of the terms that we typically use that correlates with these elements, change identification is issue management. Does your organization have a way for somebody to bring up a problem, to say, I've got an issue and it needs to be looked at? This is the first step. The evaluation is done through a change request. Hey, I'm requesting that this thing needs to be changed. Here, we're going to evaluate what needs to be done to make that change occur. Change planning is done under a change order. A change order has all the details about what changes are going to occur, the timing of those changes, the resources of those changes, and somebody's watching over that. And then the actual changes themselves, we call change actions. So I'm sure you've heard many acronyms for change, ECO, ECR, ECN, issues is just another term used for problem reporting. All of these elements are part of the 3DEXPERIENCE platform. Now, how does this correlate to what we talked about? Obviously, an issue is where something gets identified. The evaluation, as I talked about, is understand cost, resources, expected outcomes. Change orders, communication, organization, and planning. And then the execution is under a change action. Correlating that further with 3DEXPERIENCE platform, there are 2 roles on the 3DEXPERIENCE platform that will allow you to do this end-to-end process. Now, the collaborative industry innovator role is the data management role inside of 3DEXPERIENCE. So the assumption is that you're storing and managing all your data on 3DEXPERIENCE platform. If you're doing that, you have issue management, change requests, and change actions already built into that role. So data management comes with that, essentially. With the addition of what we're talking about today, the change manager role, you get the process of developing a change order. All of these things are connected such that you can create an issue that becomes a change request, that becomes a change order that has change actions on it. So this is an end-to-end connected system where data will move. Now, why is change important? I talked a little bit about this. Effective change means smart choices, increase productivity, decrease risk, and helps improve the profitability. It really can't be argued. If you do changes effectively, everything's smoother, people understand what's going to happen, you can understand the impact, and it just makes it easier for everyone in the organization. So let's start demoing out these elements in 3DEXPERIENCE platform. So the first one is issues. Issue management, issue resolution. We're really trying to give the organization a place to tell us, hey, there's a problem, there's an issue. And it's our job as an organization to look at that issue and prioritize it and track it and resolve it. Now, how do you resolve it? You resolve it using a change request, change order, or a change action. Now, everything on the 3DEXPERIENCE platform has what we call a maturity state. A maturity state, as you see there in the image, draft, to do, in work, tells the system where in the process something is. So let's go ahead and take a look at what this would look like. So here I am in the 3DEXPERIENCE platform. For those of you who have never seen the platform before, this is the interface is very similar regardless of what role or app you're using. So the things that are similar is in the corner here is something we call the compass. This allows us to get access to all the applications that I want to run on the platform. This is like your operating system on your cell phone, right? This is how you turn on any app. And the app that I'm running right now is the issue management app. Okay. Now this bar at the top tells me what app is active. You can see 3DEXPERIENCE 3D dashboard. And you're probably wondering, well, Kevin, you just said I'm running issue management. Well, the reason why dashboard is the go-to application is because you can embed other applications within it. I'm trying to correlate this to like a cell phone. Imagine like quick switcher buttons where you can switch between programs instead of kicking the icon. This is very similar to that. I have a dashboard that contains 3 tabs. Each tab has different programs or apps on them. The first one has my issue management. The second one has my change actions. And the third one has my tasks. Okay. All of these we're going to talk a little bit about today. But I'm going to start with the issue management application. As you can see here, I have 3 current issues that have been identified. Oh, I'm sorry, 4 in the organization. I can tell where in the process they are. I've got 2 that are scheduled to be worked on. I've got 1 that we're just starting to define, and we've got 1 that's actually in process right now. If I expand any of those issues, you'll actually see it shows you things that are related to it. Now this one is telling me that this warped housing is pointing to a particular file that's reported against it. So the problem is reported against a CAD model in this case. The plan is to fix this issue with a corrective action, and you can see there's a clip change required to stop the housing from being warped. You can see who owns these things, the issue itself, if anyone's been assigned to it. But let me show you how it's created, because this is the magic. Imagine for a moment anyone in your organization had the ability to raise an issue. What they can do is select over here the little plus sign. I want to create a blank issue, although there are templates. I can put a title in here. I'll just say the mount bracket is not fitting properly in assembly. And I'll put a little note in here. Some parts may be out of spec. So this can be anyone in the organization that puts in a problem, right? An issue. Now, if they know how they want it resolved or what should be done, they can put it in here. They can specify the priority. In this case, we'll go with medium priority. if they know when they want it due, they can, hey, I need to have an answer by this date. And we can go ahead and say, let's start the issue. Now, by starting the issue, it's essentially created it in my issue dashboard as to do, and this becomes another item that I can open up. And when I open it up, it allows me to add much more information to the issue itself. I can come in here, and the second tab allows me to select the related objects. These are attaching documents or CAD models that are related to this. A quick, easy example for that is I can come up here and do a search, find the model I'm looking for, and I can drop it directly on to the issue. And I'm associating the models to the issue itself. And I will see that now as I expand it over here in the plus sign, you can see that it shows up in here. Okay, and it shows me there's 2 items associated with this. Now, if we're concerned with the model in context to a particular assembly, I could come in here and say, you know what, I really want them to consider how this part is used in the context of an upper level assembly. So I can go ahead and drop that in here. All right, do that one more time, we'll drop it on. And we've tied the assembly to that as well. Now, as we're working, there are more things that we can associate with the issue. We can assign it to people. So I can assign myself in this case as the assignee. If not, I can assign someone else. Okay. These are users of the platform. The system goes out and can allow me to pick those particular users to assign them. There's Ian, just popped up. We'll give it a second here. So as you can see, that issues become intelligent buckets of information when you're dealing with it here. Okay, so I'm gonna just let Ian stay off this one. The next tab allows me to attach any related documents. So if I have Word documents or even markups, there are markup tools associated with this. You can see there's a button right up here, add a 3D markup. So this is like a markup in eDrawings that I can attach directly to an issue. And then we can also have running conversations in here where we can say, maybe tag somebody else. I can say, yeah, hey, Jesse, can you take a look at this issue? So this is a bit like a social media type scenario, but you're essentially having running conversations within the issue itself. Now, once we have the issue figured out, I can put it in work. I move it in the process so it can now be worked on. Okay, somebody's going to look at the issue, going to evaluate it, going to do a little bit more with it. The idea is that it's going to be resolved with a change process, and part of that is there's a change button up here where we can start to specify how it's going to be resolved. Now, I'm going to just close this one for a second, and I want to open up another half of this window over here. This is what we call issue 3D. So this is kind of neat. Here I have an issue against a component in my color ink. If I drag it over into issue 3D, it actually opens up the model the issue is associated with. If there are multiple issues, they will show up on the screen as well. And it allows me to see the information related to the issue in a little pop-up here. So it's a way of looking in 3-dimensional space all the issues that we're dealing with. If I did this with an upper level assembly, I would see all the issues for all the components in that assembly. So issue management is a nice little aspect of the 3DEXPERIENCE platform and a starting point for the change management process. So let's continue that conversation a bit. I'm going to go back to our PowerPoint, and we'll go ahead and continue talking about how we move forward. So the next step in the process is what we call change evaluation. This is where we start to build in change requests. Change requests is where we start to get a little more formal on what we're doing. We're proposing changes. We're understanding the impact of a change. Each group in the organization is going to look at how the proposed change affects them and do an impact analysis. And then there's approvals. If a change request is approved, that's what becomes the next step, which is change planning or change orders. So I'm going to just quickly show you a change request. So let's go back here. Now, change requests are done through another application that we call collaboration and approvals. So this will launch again in a web page, but in its own window. And it gives me a little dashboard here that allows me to select my change management pieces. There's a tab called My Changes, which is a dashboard of all the change actions, change orders, change requests, and issues. Now let's just start with issues, because since that's what we started with before. If I go to the issues, I'm able to see the issues by priority, where in the status they are, by different problem types, average duration, how long they've been in there. You can see I have some issues that have been in there for quite a while, and the timeline for each. So I have a nice little dashboard to view this information. The same thing happens with a change request. I have a little dashboard that shows me the change requests that are currently in there, and it will allow me to create a new change request. Very similar to creating a new issue, it pops up a screen to the right and allows me to put in the request. So let's take our issue that was, we had some parts that are coming in incorrectly, so maybe we want to change the measurement process and have some discussion with the vendor related to that. Parts not fitting on floor, need to inspect more parts to make sure they're in spec. And the reason parts not fitting is the request. Now, who's responsible for it? What's it reported against? Again, I can attach models to it. Who's going to be the change coordinator managing this change? Okay, what is the category, the type of change? Is it cost reduction, drafting error, marketing requirement, vendor requirement, I would say in this case? And who's going to review or approve the change request? So this is something we can set up ahead of time, is we can define who must approve something for it to move from one step to the next. So this is a very simple piece, and now I have the change request in here that I can open up in its own window and continue to build upon. Now, just as I discussed before, the changes have maturity states. So this change request is in draft. I can move it to evaluate, which is kind of that next step where I start to gather other people's opinion. But first, I want to build out the change request a little further. Maybe I want to write this against that same model. So I can add a model to this and search on, we'll find my 1F files here. So let's do 1F. See if we can find our model. There it is there. Say OK, and I'm essentially adding an object a CAD object to this. Now, when I do this, this is where I start to talk about it getting connected or being connected. By adding the content, the items that are proposing a change, if I go now under the change actions, I can see that a change action has been created for that same model. Okay, it's been created in the change request. Now, I can open up this change action and I can assign somebody to it. There are other things that I can do within the change action to ensure that this thing gets assigned to the right people. But we're really just setting this up in this case. So the next part is, now that I've got the content, I can add reference documents, and I can also do impact analysis. Now, the impact analysis is actually done at the change action for each change. And you can have lots of documents potentially changing here. But I can go to the change action, go to the impact analysis, and now the different disciplines in your organization can document what this impact means to them. So when I create a new impact, there's just a bunch of information here that helps me to understand how it's going to impact us. So let's say we'll call this the engineering impact. Changing model tolerances. Maybe we're looking at changing tolerances on this. What's the severity? Well, it's very low to us. What's the quality impact? How will it affect quality? Tighter measuring required. So that might affect quality in some way. What's what they call the life cycle cost, the number of days to resolve, say 2. And then these are all just relative values, right? Each of these values helps me to add up to a number so I can see what changes are harder or easier as it impacts my business. Some of these values are just number of days, days that'll affect the schedule, days, how many days to implement, how many days to validate. All of these are just numbers. I'm just going to throw some in here. And the impact analysis only took me 1 day. All of these things go into giving an impact score. So it basically rolls up and allows me to see an impact score compared to how it's impacting others. So if I go back to my change request, it rolls up that engineering has already done an impact analysis on their change, and here are the values. And we use these values to understand how the impact is going to affect others. I got to assign the change action, so let's do that. All right. So the change action itself, we can assign to a particular individual, and that just allows me to add a user here. I'm going to say we'll assign that to myself, and we'll add a couple people to approve the change action once it's done, and I should be set to move the request through the process. So the first thing I'm going to do, I would typically do all that work I just did in the evaluate state, and then when I go to evaluation review, it says please complete the impact analysis for at least one change action. Okay, so my change action, I've got to go to my impact analysis. So the system guides you on what needs to be done, which is really nice. I can go ahead and use this, and I can set that to in work. I should be able to move this to complete. And now I've completed my impact analysis, basically telling the system that it's done. and I'm not working on my impact analysis, and now I can move it through to evaluation review. So the process is all tied together here. The request, I gather the information, put the content to it, run the impact, create the change actions. Okay, everything is built right into the tool. Now, what you'll see is that by doing this, I've actually told the system that during the review process, I have 3 reviewers, Casey, Kevin, and Ian. And it's waiting for one of the 3 of us to approve. So this thing is sitting in evaluation review. You can see the workflow up here, but it won't move any further until we get approval. Okay, so that approval comes through our notifications. So this will take a second to show up because we just processed it. But inside of 3DEXPERIENCE will be a notification that says, hey, your task approval needs to be complete. It's assigned to you. It's due on this date. Can you please do it? Now, this is one that I've already done, but it then shows up in our tasks. So it automatically assigns a task. You get an email associated with it, and then it will show up here, similar to this one that you see right here. Okay, so this is an approval that's set to be done tomorrow for a change request. And for me to do this, I have to put in my comments. I think this change is worthwhile. We should proceed. Okay, we can type in the change and then tell the system we're going to go ahead and approve, reject, or abstain. If I approve, okay, it moves my approval all the way to completed with 1 step. Okay. Here's the notification that I was just telling you about, that the approval notification has been sent to me. And what we'll see in here when we refresh is we'll see that the approval is complete. Now notice I come back here and it looks like there are no tasks, right? There's nothing here because in its current step, there are nothing that's required. But you can see what happened and actually created a change order from the change request. If I go to change orders, change order 00105 now exists. And I'm going to open that up. And this is where everything is fully connected. So in the change order, it moved the change action into the order. If I look at the content, it moved the model into the content. If I look at the change actions as well, you can see that it was driven from the change request that became a change order. So this is what we were talking about with this full process. So let's come back to our presentation for a moment here. Change orders is the planning and orchestration phase. This is where we're going to take the content, the proposed changes that come from the request. We're going to even add other items that could be affected by this, what we call candidate items. We're going to keep track of items that have been resolved through the change order, they've been completed. It's going to have all the change actions. Dependency, if it's dependent on other orders being completed. This is all done. From a manager's perspective, this allows you to see into each of those pieces. Now, a change order is typically something that's put in place when there's multiple disciplines in an organization, where you have somebody who's managing the change, a change coordinator, and they're going to the different functional groups like manufacturing, engineering, planning, and documentation, and getting feedback and information back from them, getting signatures and approval from those people as well. So this orchestration process is requiring the change manager role. As you saw in my demonstration, we also talked about the change actions. Now, change actions is just tracking the physical change. Okay, this is from an engineering perspective, this is what you'll see most, is where the change actions tied to a model saying you've got to make this change in the CAD model. And when it's done, that rolls up into these other functions to give you that complete process. Okay, functional driven change. Now there is a dashboard in this system called My Changes. Let me just bounce and show you that real quick. This dashboard is, let's see here, close that, is launched through the app launcher here. So if I just type in changes and I select My Changes, this is the manager's view of, I'm not sure why it's saying I don't have a license, but I'll just explain it to you in the image here. So this is the manager's view of all the change orders. So if I go back to my slide here for a moment, it looks like this. You can view it in like a list mode or in these icon modes. It allows you to see all change orders that are in process, what the title is, name, where in the process they are, the severity, and it allows you to get a good look at all of the changes that you have in the system. Okay. Now, just to reiterate what we talked about, the benefit of the change process, there's lots of them. And the best change requires you to manage it and plan it. Now, I understand that all your organizations probably have varying degrees of change management. Like I said, what I just showed you with issues, requests, orders, and actions, not all organizations have all those components. But if you do have a change process, here are some of the things you can expect. And I'll put them all in here. You can easily assess and understand the need and the impact of each change. You can align your resources, manage the costs, reduce the time to make a change, right? If it's electronic and people get notified, you should be able to process a change much faster than if you're walking paper around the organization. Okay, maintaining a routine, a process that's repeatable, minimizing the possibility of failure because you've got people that have been involved in the process, have put their hat in the ring to understand how it affects them, and you reduce the risk. So I'm going to open this up for any questions. If you have any questions, just post them in the questions section of GoToWebinar. And while I'm waiting for you to type in any questions, I'm just going to show you some real quick end-to-end change processes, what we see in the field. So if you have a formal change process, that usually includes all of the pieces that I just mentioned. And it typically starts with somebody submitting an issue. Somebody has to analyze the issue and decide if it's going to be approved as an internal change, which then becomes a request. When you have the request, now you have a change coordinator involved. You start to look at the other departments. You start to talk to manufacturing and purchasing and quality, and you start to understand the impact on each of those, and you get approval from all those stakeholders. From there, it becomes a change order where you assign all the actions, you monitor the implementation process, you get approval on the change order, and you start to implement the change concurrently. Okay, so somebody's actually changing those proposed changes at the same time. So that change coordinator will work through that process till everything's approved and all the change actions are done to complete the process. This is a formal change process. Now, they do have a lot of organizations are using fast track changes where, yeah, they'll initiate a change. It will have some analysis and disposition, but they immediately go right to a change order and then start the change process, which is through change actions. It's not as formal. You don't have the request phase where you're doing all the analysis, the impact analysis, and so on. This is a little bit of a faster process start to end. These are typically for non-critical, business critical, bigger changes that need that level. So we call these fast tracks, and they have really the same kind of steps, but it reduces the analysis portion. Now you'll also have standalone change actions. Now, standalone change actions would not require the change manager role. If you're doing data management on the platform, you can create a change action straight out the gate. Say, hey, I want to change this. I can identify what I'm going to change. I'm going to assign the people, assign the reviewers, and get started. Okay, I change action, I approve the change action, and it's done, right? It's very simple change. Okay, you don't have to have all those pieces. So the standalone change action process has no change order, no change request, and in this case doesn't even require issue management. You can go right to a change action. Change action, somebody's going to initiate it, assign it, propose the changes, have a review, approve it, and complete it. Very simple. Well, this is what happens a lot of time on paper, right? It's really a change action process. Some organizations, their paper does a lot of the analysis. It does disposition with purchasing, inventory, things like that. That gets a little bit further. So I wanted to give you some examples. If there's any questions, please post them in the GoToWebinar window. I want to thank everyone for attending today. If you do post a question, I will get back to you. But I hope you saw how the 3DEXPERIENCE platform can help you to develop a proper change process. If you don't have a change process today, I'm excited to have a conversation with you and talk about what your current process is and what it could be. So I appreciate your attendance. Take care.